This is the Entrepreneur on Campus podcast. Let's go. On each episode, we talk about a new industry or market, including the entrepreneurial opportunities, the pains, and the surprises of that industry. Listen, the business world is so broad, and we are here to dissect all of the different ways that entrepreneurs make money.
Software, you make it one time and sell it 1,000 times.
E-com spaces, man, those things sell for like an 8x multiple. It's ridiculous.
Three main ways that we make money, and the primary one is actually ad sales.
The goal is usually to exit within 3 to 7 years.
I'm your host, Matthew Brown, and I've created this podcast to help you discover hidden opportunities. Thank you for tuning in, and here is today's episode. Awesome. Thank you for being here for another episode of the Entrepreneur on Campus podcast. Today, I'm here with Tayson Whitaker. Tayson, thanks for jumping on this call with me.
Yeah, happy to be here, Matthew.
I'd love to hear a little bit about your story. Like, how did you start Outdoor Vitals? How did that begin? And did you start other companies prior, or is this your first one?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I did not start any companies prior to this. I grew up in Southern Utah down here. I actually grew up in an even smaller community of about 7,000 people. I thought I was the big city around, actually, because there's like even smaller communities all around. So we had the Walmart and things like that. So I thought I was big time. But yeah, I mean, just grew up in the outdoors all the time. So spent a lot of time out there. And as I got into college, I actually served an LDS mission in Singapore. Came back and I knew I wanted to work, internationally. And as I got back and just right about that time, there's just this massive boom happening with e-commerce and online stuff. So I saw an opportunity there and just kind of realized, okay, if I can connect a few of these dots, these big waves, these big movements, I'm sure I can find some success. That's kind of where it started. So I started looking for opportunities. From there, I actually came across a company that was here in Cedar City, and they were selling things online to the health space. And so I dropped off an application. They were importing it, selling it online. I'm like, okay, I want to work here. So I dropped off an application, never heard back from them. So I ended up getting a different job. And then about a month and a half into that, I'm like, okay, I don't see this as a career path. So I went back to them and kind of followed up with them, and they didn't have a real need for me right then. So I said, okay, I'm just going to come here and work during my lunch hour. So have something for me to do. I'm just showing up. And so I did that. And they actually handed me their books to do because I was a finance student. So I started doing their bookkeeping. From there, I ended up getting a job with them and worked there throughout my college career. And then when I graduated, I went full time with them, running all their pay-per-click advertising and so on and so forth. But all through that process, I was trying to figure out, okay, what can I do that I could use kind of a similar business model and get online, do e-commerce, and have success with it. And so at that point in time, there was some big opportunities on Amazon. And, my passions were in the outdoor industry, and I was really getting into ultralight backpacking at that time. And ultralight backpacking was pretty expensive to get into. I'm sure if you guys have looked at, North Face, Patagonia, Gregory, Osprey, some of these products that are out there, you can easily spend, $1,000 on just a gear setup, like a quality one. And for someone who's in college, I was like, man, that is crazy. I know this stuff doesn't cost that much to produce. And so I'm like, if I could do this direct to consumer, maybe I could help some people out. Because what I hated seeing people buy cheap gear, go out there into the outdoors and have terrible experiences. And, I've seen that. I've done it myself in scouts. I have tons of stories like that. So I wanted to help people get actually good quality gear and be able to do it at a more affordable price. And so that's really where the idea came from. And so I went and spent a couple $100 on samples from a few different factories, got them, chose one factory, I ordered a few more samples and started selling them. So I put them on Amazon. I knew that was my best chance of success because I had no funding. I had about $500 to put down into this business at this point in time. So took that $500, bought samples and started selling them on Amazon and just started reinvesting from there.
Wow. And you think that, I don't know what it was like 5 years ago, but like on Amazon, was there a monopoly on who was selling sleeping bags?
for sleeping bags, it was a little bit less monopolized because it's something that no one wanted to sell. So everyone wanted to sell something that fit in a shoebox. That's the saying, right? It's small, it's shippable, it's lightweight, it's under the oversized mark at Amazon's warehouse. It's all the boxes, right? But I didn't start it because I was looking for an opportunity. I started it because I had a passion, and I knew that, and I just wanted to start with sleeping bags because I felt like that was a big need. So I started in that niche. Thankfully, it wasn't too crowded at that point in time. There's definitely some dominant players in that industry, but the fortunate part was they were all retail stores. So Kelty, for instance, was like the dominating one for down sleeping bags, and Kelty, they're actually having Amazon handle their listing and do everything for them. And so, by putting some real, copywriting in there, running real ads and some of those things, I was able to beat them out pretty quick actually, and have really good traction. My biggest problem actually in the beginning was I didn't have enough inventory. I bought 3, sold those, bought 5, sold those, bought 10, which I was like, man, 10's a lot of bags, sold those. And I did that a few times. And then I'm like, okay, let me, so I jumped to 50, and then I was like, man, I'm never going to sell out of these. Of course I do. So, it was a very slow process that first year before I really started getting, putting some money in. And I mean, obviously I was just reinvesting that whole time, and I was working a day job, taking everything I had from that, putting it in. And I was even taking student loans on my wife and putting them into the business at that point.
Yeah. And so when you called the factories in China, were you asking them to make modifications to their sleeping bags, or were you just white labeling and putting your logo on it?
Yeah. So in the very beginning, they sent me samples, and I just made some small alterations to what they sent. I asked them to be a little bit wider, a little bit taller, things like that. Yeah. And that's what I initially sold. Now that same bag is actually this bag that's here behind me on the wall. Yeah. It's called our Atlas sleeping bag. Man, it's probably been through like 6 modifications now. It's changed insulations twice. It's just gone through a lot. So that's something that we always do, is we're just always trying to improve things. But in the beginning, we had to keep it pretty simple.
Yeah. And how long did it take for you to start selling 50 bags at a time?
Yeah. So, I sold our first product in July of 2014. And then I kind of kept reordering and selling from there. I think I got my shipment of 50 in like November, and we had sold those by the end of November. So I don't know what the number is exactly on that, but we got to the point where we're probably selling, 3-4 bags a day during that fourth quarter. And or maybe it was even a little bit more. And I think we were totally stocked out by December. So.
Yeah. So that's what you started with. And then you've now developed many more products, right, that you've sold, and also not just selling on Amazon, but on your website, right?
Yep. Yeah. So Amazon's actually not much of a focus for us anymore. Amazon was a great stepping stone, and I always believed it was a stepping stone. People that build their whole businesses on Amazon, what I say is they're building a business. They're building a house on rented land. At any given time, they can change traffic, they can change algorithm, they can change all these things. So you keep having to play the game of Amazon and change your business according to Amazon. And for us, we got a little ways down that path. And essentially from the beginning, I always knew that Amazon was the first stepping stone, is the easiest place for me to start at that point in time. Mm-hmm. But yeah, now anymore, for instance, last year, Amazon was only maybe 40% or less of our business. So. And it'll continue, honestly, to go down. It's harder and harder for us to compete there because we have companies that come in, copy our products, copy our listings, and drop the price. So,
right. Last question about Amazon that I have is, did your experience with Google PPC help you succeed with Amazon?
It really did. Any aspiring entrepreneur, I feel like, and I'll say this, I'm a finance major in college. Mm-hmm. I learned product design, but really I'm a passionate marketer. That's probably where most of my, quote unquote superpowers are. That's where I'm trying to spend most of my time within my team now, is in that marketing strategy. And so I would advise any aspiring entrepreneur to learn, Facebook's ad platform, Google's ad platform, whatever, because once you figure out one, it's pretty easy to map that over into the other platforms. And so I was spending about $7,000-8,000 a month at that health company online through their PPC. And so I got pretty familiar with Google ads, a little bit with Facebook, so on and so forth, and especially with Amazon. And so when I jumped onto Amazon, Amazon's like incredibly simplified ads. And so that did definitely help me, pick up and hit the ground running with ads. I didn't actually run ads. And this tells you how different it is. Now, if you wanted to start on Amazon, like you got to give away a bunch of units, you got to be running ads, right out the door, all these things. I didn't turn on ads probably for the first 2 or 3 months when I was first on Amazon.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that's good to know. So now you've been selling into the outdoor industry for about 5 years. What have been the pros of selling to that market?
The pros are, it's something that's near and dear to my heart. So, even when I'm not in the office, I'm still using our gear. I kind of quote that I never am not working because I'm testing gear. I'm using gear. I'm prototyping, testing prototypes, all those things. And so it's fun because I just always get to live, in both those worlds. And really, I have a passion for business and I have a passion for the outdoors. And so I get to work inside those two passions a lot. But yeah, it's just fun. Things that you use. Biggest thing. I've heard people say, like you need to work in an industry you love. I've heard people say you need to work in an industry that works. I'm pretty fortunate that I'm able to do both. So yeah, that's what I've loved about the outdoor space, I guess, is just being able to create something and actually go use it all the time.
Right. And besides that, what about selling to that market? Is there something specific about that market that, like, are they just all super passionate people about what they do? Or like, what have you enjoyed about selling to that market?
Yeah, definitely some lessons learned is that when you're dealing with passionate markets, they're very passionate, which means they have a lot of opinions. So for instance, when we released, this is pretty early on, we released a hammock product. We designed it, had a patent on the footbox, and we actually released it on Kickstarter and raised about $75,000 with that product. Looking backwards now, that product wasn't never our best product, but it was a cool idea. It fit a little niche for certain types of people. But the hammock community, for instance, picked that up and they went bonkers with it. They hated it. It went against their traditional, like the guys that I'm saying are like spending like 20 days a year in their hammock minimum, 20 nights a year. These are serious hammock campers. Those guys hated it. And so they picked it up, bashed it, and just, it was a huge negative in that realm of the industry. Right. So that was a big lesson, is that when you're selling to a really passionate industry, you make sure your ducks in a row, make sure that you're targeting it right. Make sure that, you're just ahead of the curve. So one of our most popular videos is actually, a video of me talking about the pros and cons of that system and just being super transparent, saying like, this isn't a perfect system. It's not for everyone. This is the niche it fills. That's where we designed it. And, just trying to explain some of that. So, but with controversy, you do get more publicity. So regardless, we did grow from that, but yeah, there's pros and cons to it. So that's kind of the pros and cons, I feel like, with a really passionate industry. The other thing I would say too is when you're working within a passionate industry like this, you see an incredible amount of startups. You see a lot of people that think they have either the answer or they just think that they can make it in this industry. So probably one of the saddest things that I do is when I go to like trade shows, right, and we're showing product, I'll get out of our booth and go walk around. And I don't do this a whole lot, but I'll walk around and it makes me pretty sad because you can walk around and you can see the people sitting in the booth sometimes and they've got this idea and you can see it and you're like, that's not gonna be a winner, And you can see them as they're realizing like, man, I pulled out a home equity line on my house. I quit my job. I spent a couple grand to come to this show and nobody is talking to me. And no one is this and no one is that. And that's the scary part with a passionate business is you get a lot of competition. You get a lot of people that even just like make a lot of money and are just like, hey, now I want to do something I love. And they jump into this industry. And so there's pros and cons with that. There's the people that try it and maybe lose a lot of money just because they wanted to work in the industry. There's also times where people just like maybe make it big in another industry and they want to take and pour money into this industry because that's what they're passionate about. Right. But there's just different markets with that. So that's just maybe a little bit of a warning is that like, if you're passionate about an industry, that's not going to be enough. There's got to be more than just passion.
Yeah. So what is it that makes some of the companies stand out versus all of the ones that don't?
Yeah. So that's a good question. I think it really comes down to, kind of, I don't know, I'm a big kind of believer in the power of the founder, right? So that vision of the founder and how they go about it and whatever their skill sets are just magnified in the business, right? So sometimes we'll go to a show and we'll see like they've got like a huge like 6-wheel truck out front that's lifted 10 feet off the ground. It's got their brand and they've parked it right front center. Like, man, that's good marketing. It's super cool. Who's not going to love that, right? But in my head, I'm running the marketing and I'm running the finances at the same time. So I'm like, yeah, they're never getting their ROI on that truck. There's no way, you know what I mean? Like, and that's what's spinning through my head. And so like, that's just something that's kind of built in me. So I would say, really to have success, I see success in 2 parts, and that's, like discipline plus the knowledge side. Those 2 things are what equal great success. To give an example of this, and this is one I've given before, is, and I mean no harm to either of like these examples I'm going to give. These are just some examples, but take my father-in-law, for instance. He's super disciplined. He works super, super hard. He's a general contractor. And he'll get up every morning. He'll work his guts out all day. He'll work Saturdays. He does all these things. He's super disciplined, but he never wants to scale a team, never wants to hire. I've never seen him read a book in my life, never seen him try to learn and apply knowledge and scale. And so he, makes a solid price 6-figure income and just, that's all he's ever going to make. And then you've got the other side where there's people that maybe don't have much discipline, but they have a lot of the knowledge. And so the example I give usually is like a college professor. Not all of them, but some of the ones I know, I guess I could say, they're so smart. They're so knowledgeable. They study, but they love to work at the college because it's convenient. It's kind of fairly easy compared to maybe going and, working 50, 60 hours in corporate America where they would really be able to make a lot and so on and so forth. And so they have that knowledge side, but maybe not the discipline side. But when you can make those 2 together, that's when you find like big, big success. So when I jumped in this industry, I didn't know everything. But what I did know is that I didn't know everything. I needed to work my guts out at the same time I was studying. So I would listen to podcasts. I would study. I would read for a minimum of an hour a day. And then I'd go work and I'd work and I'd work. And between those 2 parallels, I was able to learn and apply, build step by step by step. And that's where we've been able to see, taking a $500 investment to a multi-million-dollar business. And I think you can apply that analogy into any industry. So anytime I see a business that's not working, I'm like, okay, they're missing something. Maybe they're a hard worker, but they don't have the knowledge. Maybe they have the knowledge, but they're not a hard worker, and so on and so forth.
I really love that. That's just like shows the merit of investing in yourself while really applying everything. That's awesome.
Totally.
And so those are some of the big pros that you mentioned of selling to that industry. What are some of the cons? Like, so I guess one of the cons is the criticism, right? There's a lot of that. Are there any other cons? Do these people have a hard time? Like maybe you buy a sleeping bag, but you don't need to buy another sleeping bag, right? So they're not as frequent repeat customers, or maybe they don't like to spend a lot of money. What are some of the cons of that market?
Yeah, for us, that's been a big con is the lifetime value is not as high because we really dug deep into like sleeping bags first and have slowly rolled out other platforms. That was a mistake we made. I don't know if I'd call that a con as much as a mistake that I personally made. I kind of had the retail fallacy of, own a section of retail space with all the options and all, whatever. When in reality, in today's day and world, you want to pick one avatar and sell them everything that they could use, like in the online space more so. So that was a mistake that I initially made. As far as just the cons of this industry, obviously, I mean, we touched on just how passionate. When you have really passionate people, it can go both ways. You can have really passionate people for you, really passionate people against you. Other cons is like I say, because it's a hobby industry, you have more people stepping in the industry all the time. Like if you just wanted to go make money, like you're going to make way more money selling information in the health space, wellness space, just some of these other spaces just inherently have more money. Like if you have back pain and you sell them something that will fix back pain, people will spend a crazy amount of money to fix their back pain. Right.
Right.
And so like those, like that, like pain does not ever go away versus where I'm selling like something that's more like what you do with discretionary income, extras, add-ons, something that comes after food and in your house and your car.
Right.
And so that would be another con of a industry such as the outdoor space.
Perfect. Yeah, that's very well said. And then do you sell anything retail or is it all online?
No, 100% online. Yeah.
Why did you choose to do that?
It really comes back to what I first wanted to accomplish was getting more quality gear into more people's hands. So I just refused retail. But the biggest reason is I love to pick trends and make, make decisions based on trends. And so like I said, like e-commerce was growing, international business was growing. There's all these different things. And so what I predicted actually is that within 5 years of us starting a direct-to-consumer company, that these other companies out there were going to be starting to become in a world of hurt essentially. And they at that point, they would either have to start doing direct-to-consumer more, or they'd have to start a second secret brand that was direct-to-consumer, just because so much of shopping is happening online. So while, when I started, we could have definitely jumped a lot of revenue by going retail, and just things could have gone really fast and really pleasant. What I'm definitely betting on is the long-term game, which is how does a company, like I've already mentioned Kelty, for instance, how does a company like Kelty continue to compete with us when we have better designs at 50% off of their prices? Like at the end of the day, retail, consumers just aren't stupid. And so how are they even going to come and compete with us at 40% off just from a business standpoint model? And so if I were to sell to any retail store, I have to flip all of my business model on its head, and I lose all of the upside of the work I've laid so far.
Right. Is this a company that you plan on staying with long-term, or do you plan on exiting? Because I feel like if you were planning on exiting, then maybe you would have gone retail, increase the revenue quickly, and then exit, right? So I'm curious what your exit strategy is.
Yeah, totally. For me, I want to be running this company in 30 years. I had a mentor once. I was over speaking at the university, and a mentor talked to me after, and for about 30 minutes, he was just trying to convince me to sell my company. He's like, man, cash out, take your couple million, whatever it is, and start another company. And while I learned so much starting this company, that if I started a second company, I could, go so much faster. I was like, look, if I sold this company, I would want to get up the next day and start the same company. Like there's not another industry that I want to jump into. There's not another company I want to build. Yeah. Like I've made some mistakes. Yeah. Like Amazon, at this point in time, like I was still pretty heavy on Amazon, and he's like, man, sell out before Amazon gets even harder, things like that. And I was like, oh, it's just like, this is what I want to do long-term. So really what I'd love to do is just go not slow and steady, but slow and steady compared to a venture capital company, and grow it for 30 years and see what happens there. I like the long-term game, and I love sticking with something long enough to see like massive results. I am also, and people can love me or hate me for this, but I'm also really anti venture capital. I believe that when venture capital comes into play, companies start losing their heart and soul. A company that I really look up to, for instance, would be Patagonia. Yvon Chouinard, he's run that company for like 40 years now. And no other company has like such a strong culture, such a strong tribe of people following them. It's just been really, really remarkable what he's been able to do with that. And that's what I admire, is sticking with something for that long. Venture capital to me, like I say, you just start losing standards. So look at North Face. Yeah, North Face does more revenue than Patagonia, but like, I don't think anyone would ever say that, North Face has nearly the culture, nearly the power they have, in recessions, for instance. Yvon Chouinard says this in his book, that, during recessions, their sales stay equal or go up versus everyone else starts tanking, just stuff like that. So I really value that. I've seen companies, even companies here in Utah, I won't say names, but companies that are even in our industry, where I have to wonder, they're 5 years into it, and they just like drastically changed the founding principle of their company. It's like, well, did that happen because they sold, because they raised venture capital on day one, and now they're 5 years in, which is when most venture capitals want to flip it. And so, was that a big thing that changed like the core fundamental part of that business within 5 years of starting?
Right. The founders just lose more of their control, which includes their vision of what their company could become. Right.
Totally.
Yeah.
I'd rather focus on 5 or 10 year goals than next quarter's goals or next month's goals.
That's great. That's awesome. And I think that's a huge problem with society, with politics, and with companies in general, is because they're so focused on reaching their short-term goals that they don't think of what will benefit them long-term. And speaking of long-term, I've noticed one thing that you're doing to build your long-term business is building a strong community. And you do a podcast, you blog, and you vlog, right? So I'm curious how those mediums, podcasting, blogging, and vlogging, have affected and influenced your business.
Yeah. So when I started, I had a kind of a vision of being able to feel like a mom and pop shop, but be able to run like a big corporation that can have all those advantages on the back end. And the way that I saw us being able to do that was through video. And so that's really where we started. As I started to, I mean, you can go back and look. I was literally filming videos on my phone in front of our coffee table. I mean, it was the worst quality videos you can find, but I mean, they ended up, I mean, I think to this day, they probably have nearly 100,000 views or something, some of those first videos. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to break down barriers as much as I could, because I know if I could get in front of people, I could talk, they could see me, they could see my face, they could, I could answer both hard and easy questions. I could break down those trust barriers. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I regret that I ever cut this beard. I cut it in December for a charity thing that we did. And man, I've just been trying to get it back ever since, but
it's the face of the brand.
Yeah, it was an icon. We were like, hey, let's build a new logo. And like half the people were like, do a beard. I'm like, no, that's not the logo. Anyways, but we were able to break down those barriers. So that became a huge part of our brand. I mean, people still to this day will email our customer support team and say like, hey, Tayson, I have this question, right? Like they still feel like they're just interacting with me personally, even though I haven't been able to, do customer emails for years.
Yeah.
So it's been really, really cool. That's one of the huge pros of selling online, is being able to develop personal relationships, get personal feedback. And video is a huge tool in that. I think podcasts, that's one that we rolled out and have been putting more emphasis in this year. So that's fairly new to us, but I've always been a big podcaster, and I love it because, just speaking and speaking and speaking. I mean, you can speak for an hour, people listen, and you can break down so many more trust barriers, so many more transparency barriers. And just, I want people to feel like they're buying from their friend, not from a big venture capital firm, or not from a faceless brand.
I love that. Makes it very personal. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's been tough, but it's been well worth it.
Yeah. And then I'm curious, have you, so you're familiar with Clickfunnels, right?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
So how have you used that software in your company?
Yeah. So Clickfunnels is fairly new to us. And when it came into play more so was about a year ago. We were struggling a little bit on Amazon. We weren't finding great answers because we were wanting to grow our business to be a more premium brand. Amazon wanted us to grow it to be a cheaper, lower end brand. And so it's just like, hey, we keep growing in opposite directions. And so Amazon can't be, our growth channel forever. Because, initially we were growing at ridiculous amounts, 16x the first year, 5x the next year, just massive amounts. And that was due because we're just stepping in front of the traffic source of Amazon. When you realize that wasn't going to be a good source, we had to figure out, okay, what's another way we can bring people on, do it at a profit. And if we can do it at a profit, then we can hit exponential growth levels again, right? Instead of being like, okay, we can grow it exactly, 10% a year, like every other company out there without venture capital or whatever. Like I can grow at 10% a year forever. So that's the new goal. It's like 10% a year just didn't excite me. So how can I bring people on, do it at a profit so that I can hit exponential type growth levels again? Mm-hmm. And, in pursuing that, we came across Clickfunnels, and I was familiar with him before that, Russell Brunson, but not like terribly familiar. And so I kind of did like everything else I did. I just totally immersed myself in it. Started reading everything I could, studying everything I could. I'm pretty studious when I need to be. And so, just watching what other companies were doing, so on and so forth. And this is another one of those industries where I feel like we got to pave the way. I mean, other people were doing different things, but we were able to figure out, another way to do that. So we have what you call a lead magnet, which is a product that we can sell, basically at a loss. We sell this product at a loss to bring customers in, and then we sell them some additional things on the back end, try to remake our money right away. And as soon as you can break even on something like that, technically you can hit an exponential growth level. So I'm a little hesitant to share too much on this because
that's good.
If say our competitors get out there and just start like trying to duplicate everything we do, which they've done so far in our business history, like I always say, our biggest threat is the people that copy us, not the people that we're going after or trying to, grow to be, because they're just relentless, and it's sad. But yeah, essentially what we're able to do is we're able to bring customers on at a profit on day one.
Yeah.
Since we can do that, we can scale to an infinite amount, right? So right now we're able to bring on, we actually had to limit this because we just don't have the inventory capacity right now to do this. Hopefully that will be resolved within a few short months, but we're bringing on 150 new customers a day with our funnel. And then from there, the goal is to try to convert them into buying bigger ticket items, becoming lifetime value customers. And so if we had nothing holding us back, as far as inventory wise, I would dare say that we could be at, 200 or 300, purchasers a day that are people basically coming in the front door that give us an opportunity to bring them onto the brand.
Yeah.
Like I say, we're trying to, just break even, if anything, on that front end. We're losing money on the front page, trying to make it back on the second pages. You have ad spend, you have all the costs that you have. So if we can break even on there, then the goal is to be, okay, now we have a much more targeted list of people that we can be like, hey, what about this second product? What about this third product? Why don't you become a lifetime value, or, someone has real lifetime value to our company? Join our tribe, just be a part of our community. And so it's been a really positive thing for us, because again, I hate venture capital, but this is 100% of a way that we can grow without the need of venture capital and still grow at exponential rates.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. Great way to acquire customers. I had Steven Larson, who's one of the big Clickfunnels guy, on the podcast about 2 months ago. So I just wanted to see it.
I'll have to listen to that one. I listened to a couple of your podcasts. I didn't see that one, so I'll have to listen to him. He's a pretty excitable guy.
Yeah, he's awesome. He's super fun. So the last kind of industry questions that I have are, so with selling online, what has been the best thing about selling online? Like, what pains have you been saved from by not selling retail and by selling online?
Pains that we've been saved from. Well,
or maybe
I'm allowed to focus.
Suffer from because you haven't sold retail. But what are the best things about selling online?
No, I think that's a good way to put it. I mean, it can be painful to sell retail. One of the biggest things is I'm able to design things, and again, in the beginning, I wasn't as free, but now, like, we've got a designer on our team. I work a lot with him in new product designs because of our size and our ability, and things like our last Kickstarter. Doors start opening with whoever we want to manufacture with, we can get in with, and so what's great about now is I have one customer, and that's the people buying my product. If I'm selling retail, I have multiple things to think about. One is I've got two customers. I've got the retail buying agent, and then I've got the people buying it off the shelf. And you have to make both of them happy. And if you don't, then you're out of business. So I'm able to design specifically for the person buying it. Not so much does this fit on a retail shelf? Does it hit a certain price point? Is it going to make this retail buyer happy who may not even use outdoor products? You never know. And so that's been a huge plus. Is I now, especially, and I kind of say, well, there's Outdoor Vitals, the startup, and there's Outdoor Vitals like 2.0. And in Outdoor Vitals 2.0, like, we get to design whatever we want for whoever we want, because we've put in that hard work. We have those doors open now, and we're not restricted by retail limitations, price points. There's some products, we've got under development right now that, we might be able to sell for $200 or $300. You stick that in retail store, it's $500 or $600. How many people are you pricing out of the game with that? Would a retail store even want to put a $600 product on their shelf? Maybe not. So that's been like one of the biggest pain points we've been able to sidestep in doing it online.
Right. You just want to get it into more hands, and it's significantly cheaper like that.
Yeah.
What about,
one more thing I wanted to add there is, just like I mentioned with Amazon would kind of be like a retailer in some senses. And so when you build a whole business based on retail partnerships, they're just partnerships. They're rented land, they're rented shelf space. And so, something changes within that business, a new retail buyer comes in that doesn't like you, whatever it is, you can lose massive amounts of money through changes like that. And that, to me, is another risk that I don't have to take.
Yeah. And what would you say are one or two of the biggest pains that you've had from selling online?
Biggest pains? Whew, there's definitely pains. There's, I would tell anyone this is not the easy way, but I think it is the better way. The biggest pains is you kind of have to have all of your ducks in a row before you can start having good success. I'd feel like, so you can't just like build a product and throw it up online and expect success. You can't just, have a crappy product and know how to sell online and have success. Like you've got to have like every facet of it all dialed in. So that's definitely one hard part. Like I see a lot of people that design a really cool product and then they just fall on their face online, because what they don't realize is it's actually harder to sell something online than it is in person. But once you can figure out how to sell it online, you can scale it a lot more, right? So that's one of the hard parts. But the other hard part is like you have to go out and individually find and bring on each customer. And that's just can be a very expensive process, can be very time intensive. Like I say, fortunately with us, with like say Clickfunnels, we've been able to figure out ways where we can do that highly effectively. But that took us a lot of time and resources to get things dialed to where we could start scaling that. And you're busy already, so figuring out stuff like that can be hard. But if you didn't have the ability to do what we're doing there, it becomes very hard, because you have to literally like go out and find each individual customer one by one instead of stepping in front of other people's traffic sources.
Yeah, awesome. I love that. So yeah, thanks so much for talking about those industries, about the outdoor industry, and then talking about selling online. So a couple questions I ask all of my guests are, what are your thoughts on starting a business in college versus getting more educated first?
I believe in both, but I believe in not waiting, for sure. So I actually had like this plan mapped out when I was a younger kid. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go to college. I'm going to get a finance degree. I'm going to go work for a company. I'm going to learn all the ins and outs. And then I'll start my company when I'm like 28 or 30 years old. Mm-hmm. And I told that to a kind of a mentor of mine. And he was like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And I legit like was just, I bet my jaw just dropped. I'm like, that's the safest, best thing I could have ever done. What are you talking about? Like, I was like just shattered when he said that to me. And he's like, think about it. When you're 28 or 30 years old, you're going to have a wife, you're going to have kids, you're going to have bills, you're going to have expenses. Why would you take on a ton of risk at that point in your life? And, I sat there, I'm like, oh yeah, that's really true. Like I've got so many more things that are counting on people that are counting on me, so on and so forth. That would be hard to quit. Let's say I did really well in corporate America for a few years and I was making $80,000 or $100,000 a year. Like how could I step away from that to start something else? And so that changed my perspective to, okay, just try to start things right away. And so that's what I did. And I would definitely advise people to do that. Now, that does not mean by any means drop out of college, quit your job, whatever, to start a business. What I do believe in is working for an education. Like I mentioned at the first, I went in and just worked during my lunch hour. I'd take a sandwich to this office. I'd eat my sandwich while I worked, because I was working for an education. I was getting in the industry I wanted and I was learning. And so anytime you can, even if that means a big pay cut, I took a pay cut, after I graduated college to stay at that company and to continue to learn. But I knew that if I did that for a year, I was going to be making way more than anyone else in my graduating class by the end of that first year if I did that. So having that, that ability to do that was super helpful. So, yeah, I mean, start right away, start as soon as you can, and bootstrap it. Do it in your extra hours. If you're not someone who can do it in your extra hours, if you like cap out at 40 hours a week, I don't think entrepreneurship is for you. Like you've got to be able to work longer hours and work harder than your next door neighbor for at least a given period of time to make it as an entrepreneur. My goal, I mean, honestly, like my goal isn't to make $1 million and just stick it in my pocket every year. Honestly, like my goal is to build a lifestyle that I wanted. And I still work a lot of hours, but I'm slowly building that lifestyle, and I'm getting closer and closer to being able to take off the time that I need. For instance, my wife had a baby last week, and so I'm just working part-time until I decide I want to go full-time again. You know what I mean? Like I have flexibility there, but that's stuff that's been built over 5 years of, the first couple of years I was working 60 hours a week minimum all the time, for 3 years straight.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen in a 40-hour work week.
Yeah. I love that. And congratulations on the baby.
Thanks.
What's your process of goal setting? You mentioned that you like to think 5 years, 3 years down the road. Do you also make short-term goals?
Yes, absolutely. So, I believe that hindsight is 20/20, right? You can always look backwards in your life and see the mistakes that you made. What most people don't realize is that you can do that same thing in effect going forward. So if you can visualize where you want your life to be in 10 or 20 years, and you can get very clear on that vision, then what you do is from that place of mind, you turn around and you look backwards at your business or your life or whatever. And then the goals just start falling in place for, let's say, the yearly goal or the quarterly goal or the monthly goal. And so as a business, I meet with my team once a week, and we have quarterly goals. That's kind of where we draw most of, we report monthly, but we draw up quarterly goals. But if you were to see my goal sheet, you would see that right at the top, we're building to be a $10 million a year business at such and such year, right? That's the main goal. And so when people come and ask me questions, they're like, okay, should we do this or do this? And I'm like, well, what would a $10 million a year business do? That's what we need to make the decision based off of. And so that's a few years out for us, but that's how I try to look at it is projecting myself forward and then looking backwards. So I have yearly goals. I have quarterly goals, but those actually come behind my 5-year goal or my 3-year goal or whatever, that longer term goal that I can really work towards for a few years.
All of the short-term goals are in line with where you want to be.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Exactly.
Last question that I have, do you have a morning routine that gets you set for the day?
Yeah. So I wake up at about 5:30, get ready, and I go to the gym. I listen to podcasts and books during that time, both getting ready, going to the gym, and then driving back to my office. And so in that time, I can get, especially if I'm listening on faster pace, I can get 2 hours of podcasts or books in during that time. And then at that point, I'll get into the office. So that, like, listening while I work out allows me to really balance my life. I find if I don't work out, I get out of balance pretty quick. And then if I'm not learning, I find that like the drive starts to taper a little bit, if that makes sense. So, when you quit learning, you quit having new ideas and new thoughts of like, okay, let's go get this done. That would be super amazing. And so constantly learning also helps like fuel the fire, helps with motivation, helps you always have new ideas and new things to work towards as well. So
awesome. I love that. Thank you so much for coming on today, Tayson.
Yeah, no problem. I've appreciated it, Matthew.
Thank you guys again for listening. I love you. Have a good one.